Hello, folks. I brought my little steel with me today. We may want to manufacture a little bit before we leave. Sit on. Okay. I want to talk to y'all today about what it was like to grow up in the moonshine capital of the world, Franklin County. And Floyd also is tightly connected together, which the counties join. The people I grew up with in the 1950s and 60s, they were a tight-knit group of people, and they took care of one another, looked out for each other at all times. And about everybody I knew in the first 15 years of my life was connected in some way or another to the moonshine business. Even on down to the minister, I think he knew where the money came from when they built the Sunday school rooms. And that was the only industry in the southwestern part of Franklin County and probably the northeastern part of Floyd County, and maybe extended farther than that. But it was fun growing up. I've lived longer in Floyd County, 40 some years, longer than I did in Franklin, even though I was born in Franklin County. And the moonshiners and the revenue officers were adversaries, but they also had a lot of respect for each other. And that was earned. It wasn't a given, it had to be earned. And the revenues, a lot of times, they would come in, they knew these moonshiners were making a living for the family. That was back in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. And later it got to be a big business where it was a money thing instead of taking care of your family. But the revenues would come in, and most time the moonshiners would get a warning beforehand by somebody. And sometime I think it was even the revenues that gave them the warning. I mean, it appeared to be that way. But the revenues would come in and raid a steal. And sometimes they'd catch somebody, sometimes they wouldn't. I don't think they really wanted to back then. But they would, instead of taking them into jail, they would tell the moonshiners, you know, if you have time next week, come in and post bond. And I don't think they do that now. I think they take you directly to jail. But it was, they knew they were trying to, you know, feed their family and take care of the family. And there was no other industry around close. The closest thing was furniture factories about 30, 40 miles away. And they had steel mills in Roanoke. But a lot of people didn't have transportation to get there, so they didn't have any way to go to work. That was the industry of basically Floyd and Franklin County. And even the judges, when they would go to court, they had a May court and a November court that they took the moonshine. They'd catch them, and then they had 6 months to make more moonshine, make a little money, and go to court. And the judges even knew that they were just trying to make a living to feed their families. And they knew they were just doing a job. There's no hard feelings. When they came and caught the moonshiner, yes, he'd go to court and say, yes, I'm guilty. And they would give him, most times, 6 months. And they had 3 federal penitentiaries, and that's where they wanted to go because they could pull their time in 4 months and 13 days, I believe it was, if they gave them 6 months. And if they went to a state prison, they had to pull more time. It was closer to what if it was 6 months, it was closer to 6 months they had to pull. But it was fun growing up in Franklin and Floyd County. I went to Floyd County School a couple of years, and I think it's what brought me back here. I've been here 40 years the last time, 42 years, I think. And, but they were just normal people. I mean, you know, they were respected by everybody within their own tight-knit group. But when strangers came in, everybody knew about it and they wanted to see who they were. If you didn't drive a Ford or Chevrolet, they checked you out to see who you were. Because that's all anybody had back then was those type things. And the most famous moonshiner that I know of, which is also a race car driver, and I'm sure most of y'all have heard of, was Curtis Turner out of Floyd County. And he was sort of a daredevil and his own man. He liked to do things that nobody else could do, which he did his whole life. I think he died, I think, at 46 years old in a plane crash. But he was a famous race car driver, and he was also a moonshiner. And it was said that when he was in the Navy, that he brought sugar from the naval base into Floyd and Franklin County, sold it, took moonshine back, and sold it, you know, to the people in the Navy. And he was forever doing things that nobody else could do with a car. And it was said that one time he got caught for reckless driving. I think it was in California. And he went to court. And the judge asked him, was he guilty or not guilty? And he said, not guilty, Your Honor. And the judge said, how do you figure that? You know, said you were out reckless on the highway. He said, if you know your car and know how to drive it, there's no such thing as reckless driving. So supposedly, he told the judge if he would prove it to him if he would ride with him. And they said he did. And he got out on the freeway and he was going down the road, running about, I think, 100 mile an hour or so. And they said he slid around, did a 360 on the interstate, and the judge passed out. But he proved his point. But he was the most famous moonshiner that I've ever heard tell of, you know, and he was something of a hero back in my young days. Everybody wanted to be Curtis Turner, you know, and make the whiskey and drive the fast cars. That's kind of all we worried about. And talking about the respect that the judges and the moonshiners had for one another. I had a cousin that was, I guess you'd call him an alcoholic or drunk. They didn't go to the meetings. And he would be either in the May court or the November court, federal court in Roanoke, if he wasn't serving time. He pulled a lot of time in prison. But he was also somewhat of a comedian. He was an humble man, but he liked to drink. And he went to court one time in November, I think, the November court. And he always wore bibby overalls. He wore a big hat and he had a big pin in the front of it, a big safety pin. And most of the time he had one of his overall legs rolled up like he'd been riding a bicycle with no chain guard on. And they had about 5 different charges against him. They had him for manufacturing illegal whiskey and different charges. So when he got before the judge, and the judge asked him, said, Willie, are you guilty of manufacturing illegal whiskey? And he said, yes, sir, Your Honor. Said, I'm guilty as I can be. And asked him another charge. Willie said, yes, sir, I'm just as guilty as I can be. So he went on through the charges till he got to the last one. And the last charge was they was tapping Appalachian's power lines to run their pumps and motors at this distillery. And the judge asked Willie, said, Willie, are you guilty of this charge? And he said, no, sir, Your Honor. Said, I don't have such a whine $1 watch. You know I didn't do it. And the judge got tickled. He laughed and said, he laid his head down on the desk. So after he quit laughing, he raised back up and he told Willie, said, I have to give you 6 months. to pull. And that was, he knew he was telling the truth, and that was the respect he had for the moonshine. And that's about all I got. Thank you very much for your time.